Hey everyone, my name is Matt Rosenberg, and today I'm going to be reviewing Eragon. Eragon is a fantasy novel written by Christopher Paolini. It's set in the fictional world of Alagasia, and it centers around a young man named Eragon who finds a dragon egg in the woods. This dragon hatches for him, and he eventually becomes one of the fabled dragon riders, the likes of which haven't been seen in this world for over 100 years, except for the evil king Galbatorix. Him finding this egg sets him on this amazing quest in which he learns to ride this dragon, he learns to do magic, he learns swordsmanship, he travels to amazing lands and encounters incredible creatures. Now, Eragon holds a very special place in my heart, and that is why I have chosen it to be the first novel I am reviewing on this channel. Hi, everyone, by the way. I started reading Eragon when I was 12 years old, and it got me hooked into reading, and that is one of the reasons I really love Eragon. So I'm going to do this with all the videos on this channel, hopefully. I'm going to look at the good, the bad, and something unique about this novel. So let's get into it. First of all, Eragon, I still think to this day, 13 years later, is a good book. It's not a great book, as I probably once thought it was, but it is a good book. It has its flaws, and again, we'll get into that in the bad section, but it is a good novel. And one of the reasons is because it's simple. It's simply paced. It's enjoyable enough. It's brisk enough. The plot is simple. It's straightforward. The characters' motivations are very clear. The good guys are good. The bad guys are bad. It is simple, and it is enjoyable to read. Now, there are parts in it's, his later books are a little bit longer than they probably should be. But Eragon is the first book in this series, and I think it does a good job at actually setting up the world and starting the world out. Especially the main character of Eragon. His motivations are very, very clear, and you see that, and you can get behind him. And especially this book having a younger protagonist, Eragon being 16 most of the novel. That makes sense. 16-year-olds, last I checked, aren't the most complex of thinkers. If you're 16 out there, don't worry, you'll get there. But I think it works for the audience that I think ended up reading the book, even if Christopher Paolini didn't mean for it to be really like a young adult novel. Secondly, the story behind this book, it's a really cool story. Christopher Paolini started, Paolini, I think that's how you pronounce it, started writing Eragon when he was 15, which is awesome. It got published, I believe, soon after that. I think he was 16 or 17 when it got published. And his parents decided to publish it. They made their own publishing company. They gave up like everything they had. And then eventually, Carl Hiaasen, I believe is how you pronounce his name. He's the author of Hoot, a well-known kind of young adult novel, conservationist novel. Discovered it randomly in a bookstore that his family was selling it, and he gave it to his stepson, and his stepson read it, and he was so engrossed by it that he gave it to his dad, and his dad was able to get it published, and that's what really brought Eragon into the mainstream. But it's really cool that Christopher Paolini started writing this book when he was 15. Yes, it is a bit derivative. Again, we'll talk about that in a second. Yes, the characters aren't the most complex and deep characters, but it's a really cool story that he could write something that eventually would be turned into a movie, if that's what you want to call it. It's garbage. But it's really cool that he was able to do that at this age, and that it became something that was mainstream for him. Another thing I really, really like about Eragon and the whole inheritance cycle is the magic system. And this is getting a little bit complex. I don't want to give away too much, but the magic system is very much something that can be really related to real life, as silly as it sounds. There's a YouTube channel called Hello Future Me that I recommend you guys checking out. But he kind of talks about hard magic systems and I believe soft magic systems. And the way they work is hard magic has very, very clear set rules that you have to follow or dire consequences happen. And soft magic it's kind of ethereal, it's Lord of the Ringsy, it's never really explained, but it's kind of a part of the world. The magic system in Eragon is very much a hard magic system. The whole concept of the magic system is that when a spell is cast, whatever energy in your body that you would have to use to do that specific spell is the same amount of energy it takes a toll on you. So it's very much a hard magic system, but it very much makes sense to me because it's set up in a way that kind of everyone can understand. Everyone's felt gone for a run or done something exhausting. They felt tired, and that's how Paolini describes the magic in this. After something really strenuous is done with magic, the same amount of energy is taken from a person, and if that person has too much energy taken, they die. So it's a really interesting magic system, and I do really like how it plays out into the story. Okay, let's talk about the bad. Okay. Eragon is extremely derivative, and Christopher Paolini, if you ever watch this, I'm sorry. It is. It takes a lot from Star Wars. It takes a lot from Lord of the Rings. Plot-wise, I think it's kind of beat for beat, almost Star Wars, if you kind of go through the series. The characters are taken from Lord of the Rings, kind of the different races, but then again, those were taken from Norse mythology, so that's something that, isn't, I don't think it's a kind of a detriment to the novel. A lot of novels, fantasy novels, have used dwarves and elves and things like that. But I think the one thing that is the downside to Eragon, and honestly the entire inheritance cycle, is it's a bit derivative. It's beat for beat different stories, and so if you know those stories, you can kind of tell that he took from those stories. So that's not great. And the second biggest negative I think I want to talk about is almost part of the first positive. The story behind this, again, is that he started writing this when he was 15, which is awesome. He also started writing this when he was 15, so it's kind of not awesome as well. Some of the dialogue is unrealistic. It looks like it was written by a 15-year-old. Some of the plotting, some of the characters, they seem like they were written by a 15-year-old. And honestly, that's okay. He was that age when he started writing it. And the quality of a novel you get, I think the good outweighs the bad in this sense. So yes, the two big bads are it is derivative, and the characters, the dialogue, the prose, it does seem like it was written by a 15-year-old. Okay, so now to get to something unique about this novel. The most unique thing about Eragon, I'd say, is a big positive. And that's it got another generation of readers to read fantasy novels. Now, people will say, well, that was kind of Harry Potter. And it definitely was. Harry Potter was super important in young kids reading fantasy novels. But I believe those started getting published in the 90s. Eragon was published in 2002. So it kind of took another generation and got them interested in fantasy. Whether or not you believe it's the best book ever written, it's not. I used to think so. But it got a whole nother generation of readers into reading fantasy. And that honestly is an amazing thing. Without Eragon, I would not have read any of the novels I've read now. I'd never read any Brandon Sanderson, no Tolkien. I would not have read any of these amazing stories that I kind of would have missed out on. So I have Christopher Paolini to thank, Carl Hiaasen to thank, whoever was involved in writing and getting this book published and getting it outspread to a lot of people. I thank you, because it got me into reading and these amazing stories that I absolutely love and adore to this day. So overall, I still enjoy Eragon. Yes, it's a bit derivative. Yes, the characters aren't perfect. Yes, the dialogue's not perfect. But I still think that it is a fun, enjoyable novel to read. And I definitely overall recommend you read it if you haven't already. Guys, thank you so much for listening. Again, this is the first video I'm doing on this channel. I'm kind of figuring out what I'm going to be doing, the structure I want to do, how I want to kind of do this whole thing. But I really appreciate it if you got this far, if you listened to this whole thing. Thanks so much, and we will see you next time. Peace.